Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. This podcast covers the defending national champions, and they do that quite well. Got a great show going for you today. The Dean, Bill Kurelic, will be here. Mark Porter will be here. We're going to discuss all that happened on the red carpet this weekend, on a glorious day in the shoe. Glorious for many reasons. We'll try and break down as many of them as we can. It is currently live, 9:04 a.m. At 10 a.m. Eastern, Mark Porter will host his weekly live chat. You definitely don't want to miss it. All your questions answered, anything you may have for our in-house scout. He has broken down the Ohio State-Texas game. He's seen all the top recruits. He's seen all the top visitors. So Mark is the guy to talk to for that. And then today is the last day for those of you who have not done it yet. Our site is having a 75% off sale for the year. Now is the time to get on it. That will take you through 9 months of free content, and then you pay for the last 3 months, and who knows what we'll be defending by then. But let's bring him in here. The Dean, Bill Kurelic, and the Grand Poobah, Mark Porter. Mark, a little cloudy to start the week. That's okay. We're going to start with the Dean, Bill. We've been doing recruiting here for quite some time. I'm not sure there's been a more beautiful day in the shoe when you talk weather, when you talk you good,
well,
Mark? Hold on a sec. Weather and everyone there. So it was quite the spectacle. You add in the pageantry of the game, two of the marquee names in the sport, great colors, and the Lee Corso tribute, etc. It was kind of a holiday, it felt like. And then the Buckeyes treated Texas like the way they should have been treated. It was a star-studded cast. When I was looking through the photos, I had to click down several pages just to go through all of them. Let's talk about the guys, Bill, that you think are top of the board guys. One thing we're realizing here is that Ohio State may have a elitist mentality when it comes to recruiting now in terms of who gets the big dough. So let's focus on the guys you think will be kind of top of the board guys that were here this week and that we'll be covering here forever.
Well, actually, I just probably 5 minutes before this podcast put a story on our site about two top young quarterbacks raving about their experience at Ohio State. One of them, wonderful Champ Mons, 2028. Ohio State has offered him. And Ohio State has their 27 quarterback. They have, of course, their 26 quarterback, both committed. And they got, they have to keep recruiting those guys because you want to keep them in the class, obviously. They recruit guys all the way through the process, but they now are fully, have plenty of focus on 2028, and Champ Mons is a great one. Also, in that article this morning, Kellen Hall, the young defensive lineman from Louisville, Kentucky, defensive end, defensive tackle, 2028. He raved too about his experience, and he's a top young guy. I think he is the number 2 or number 3, depending on what rankings you look at first, defensive lineman in the country. And you go back to a couple other articles I did over the weekend, one on Saturday night, one on Sunday, and you've got guys like David Gabriel Georges and Cameron Spell, who are two elite running backs for 2027. Spell, by the way, is committed to Penn State, but is now talking about it, at least his dad is, and an official visit to Ohio State, even though he's committed to Penn State. And David Gabriel Georges, he's a huge Ohio State target. You had a lot of Ohio kids there, obviously, that the Buckeyes would like to land. In fact, many of their 2027 most, I'd say, 2027 line offers in Ohio were at that game and came away very impressed. A lot of their commitments were at that game for 2026. And again, you've got to recruit those guys all the way through the process. I could go on and on about the long and impressive list of guys in that stadium on Saturday. And one thing I'll say, Dan, is that was the largest group of recruits, I'm pretty sure, that, at least that I can recall in my almost 40 years of doing this, at any one Ohio State home game. Really, really impressive job by Mark Pantoni and the Ohio State staff, Mark Pantoni's staff, the entire coaching staff, of getting their top guys in Ohio Stadium. And, as far as people have talked about how loud the stadium is at times and how maybe Ohio State fans possibly sit on their hands some. Well, I don't think, and I talked to a lot of the guys that were at that game on Saturday. And one theme that came up quite often from the recruits there was just how loud that stadium was. Many of them said it was the loudest stadium that they have ever been in. So it was really a spectacular atmosphere at Ohio State on Saturday. And it was for a noon game. Usually you think of the night games when you think of all that stuff. It was for a 12 noon game.
Mark, your thoughts on the game? I know you did your Buckeye in the Sky, and it's up there, and we'll get to that later, but just your thoughts on the pageantry, kind of what you've heard from recruits, et cetera.
I think that was such a big week one game that we were all so nervous. It feels like the pressure valve has been released. Like a lot of the questions and angst and doubts and woulda, coulda, shouldas, we now have tape on, we can look at, we can evaluate performances. And I think that's a relief when you work at a place like Bucknuts, because for the weeks leading up to it, we didn't have much concrete things to go on. Now we have actually concrete facts and things we can look at. And now we can project into the future and kind of get a better gauge of where we're at. But I think it was a super impressive win. I think new coordinators, coaches, new quarterback, new players everywhere. Number one team in the country. They're spending as much as we're spending. Playoff. You may see them again in the playoffs. You already saw them in the playoffs. Like, it really was a pressure cooker of a game, and it didn't like having to pick it last week. I thought it would be a one possession, last drive type of game going down to the final seconds, and it was, but it didn't feel like it was that close. It felt like Ohio State really, their defense, it felt they controlled the game. And that one amazing catch that's what it took to get your only points of the game, was an amazing one-handed catch that you probably couldn't duplicate again. Maybe twice out of 10 tries, you might be able to duplicate that again. So I really think it was a very strong performance. It really can put Buckeye fans at ease that your backups that you didn't know much about, some might be better than the starters on the national championship team, and some might be the same, and then some areas we may need a little work, but you're operating at an extremely high level. The moment wasn't too big for Julian saying, as they say, where for the new quarterback, we weren't, rotating another quarterback in at halftime because he was feeling the pressure. I don't think Arch Manning was as bad as people are making him out to, the national pundits. I see, Arch Manning looked rattled. He looked like he was frozen, deer in headlights. That's a hell of a quarterback. He is a big, strong quarterback. I mean, he's going to be one of the best going in the NFL draft. We got away with week one on him and held him in check, but he's definitely got a big future ahead of him. I wouldn't be so tough on his performance.
One thing, Dan, I forgot to mention, it was truly impressive how with the noon start, there was some difficulty in getting guys from Texas to Ohio State on Saturday. The flights didn't work out very well from that state. But they sure did a great job. The staff sure did a great job of getting kids from California all the way across the country, because, they're behind us time-wise, and that helps of getting a flight, a later night flight to Ohio State. The Ohio State staff did a great job of getting the California guys that had games in most, if not all cases, to Ohio State in time for that game.
It's very interesting when I look at some of the comments here. This one's great from D. Sanchez. Flight. This was, of course, the inaugural game for Devin. Saw him out there. Boy, getting snaps in your first game at Ohio State as a true freshman and against what was the number one ranked team in the country. I don't know if I could even watch that if it was my kid. I'd have been so nervous. But Flight was great. UT fans almost started a fight. LOL. My guess is that was on the way there, not the way back, because they were probably a tad quiet or just already beginning to be hung over, and kind of like the Tennessee people who showed up. Half of them took their shirts off and celebrated before the game in the cold, and they were just very, very cold. It was a great game. Very impressive. Mark, let's bring up your Buckeye in the sky. Let me let everyone know this. Again, Mark will be chatting at 10 a.m. For those of you that are listening to this via the pod or whatever and need to get to it. But Mark does his review of the game each week. We'll pick 10 or more plays. I don't know how he'll be able to do that against Grambling, but Mark, take it away.
Yeah, this is always fun to slow things down and pick it apart. I know the Buckeye fans really like to see what happened and to see the different defenses. So Matt Patricia's defense is obviously going to be different than what we've seen in the past. You saw right there the man-to-man assignments. So they're a man-to-man defense. This is the most basic run play you can run. The gap blocking, down blocking, where you pin all the offensive or defensive linemen inside and you kick out the end man on the line of scrimmage. You're going to see this play is set up perfectly. On 4th and 2, there's going to be a seam there. The kick-out block is going to happen. Why Texas turned this into an RPO, I don't know. I'm going to pause this here. This middle linebacker should be blocked by the tight end. As a tight end myself, 100 times out of 100, I blocked the middle linebacker on the gap call. They're trying to run this in an RPO where if this linebacker comes downhill, they're simply going to dump it to the tight end. And in a zone coverage, that would work. But because it's man-to-man, this defensive back actually has the tight end man-to-man. So when he goes by the linebacker, he's going to be covered. They leave, by design, the middle linebacker unblocked on 4th and 2. I don't know who drew this up in the Texas staff room and said this is going to be a winner. But if you're going to pull it, you got to pull it now and throw it to one of those guys and stick the dagger in Ohio State's heart and make that X and O scheme work out. But you on 4th and 2 just handed it off to a tailback and to an unblocked guy. I want more of those play calls out of our opponents this year if we can somehow arrange that. Okay, on defense here, you see the cover 2 shell, 2 corners up tight, 2 safeties back. Those safeties are in there tight. They'll get out to the hashes. So it's kind of a cheated cover 2 scheme here. And we're going to see an inside blitz by the 2 linebackers. That essentially leaves 3 guys underneath, 2 over the top. Not a real heavy zone scheme, but it's a 6-man pressure. So they're really trying to get there on saying. Ohio State has a great play call here. And if they're going to have 3 guys underneath, if you could space out your 4 guys underneath, and you'll see, I'll pause this here and kind of explain this concept. The running back's going to come out here. You have a receiver here and a receiver here. That's going to take up 3 of those defenders. The 4th one's going to be wide open. I think if I'm Texas, Jeremiah Smith would be one of the guys I would cover, not the other 3. But logic doesn't always work there, and that's a nice, simple pitch and catch for a quarterback. Ohio State here, we're going to check out them on defense. And I was really fascinated with Ohio State's defense to see how much different it was. With Knowles, we had 3 safeties, and there were these complex alignments. One safety in front of the other usually indicates a cover 3, but they're lining up like a cover 3, and at the snap of the ball, they're going to get back to a cover 4 or a cover 2 shell. You see the linebackers and the coverage underneath. That means 5 guys are going to be across the short coverages. This is Texas's version of crossers. So they're going to try to get flow going one way. They want the deeper crossers for the first down, but as you can see, there's a line of Ohio State defenders right at this first down marker. No one's catching a ball right here. So these guys, as they go deep, we're giving them the 5 or 6 yard catch, and we're going to rally and tackle that before the first down marker. I don't know why Arch Manning doesn't take this. It's what's there. Maybe he thinks he can outrun everybody, but the 4-man rush works, and I think you get credit for a sack here or near sack, or I think we needed to get more statistical stats to make the fans feel better. But to me, that counts as a good one. That's a positive play, coverage, sack, everyone working together. I know Dan will stop me here eventually, but it's week 1, so we're going to tease people.
We'll do this play, and then we'll just do one more.
Then there's plays in here where you're really going to want to see the end of this breakdown. Looks like cover 3. When it's cover 3 or it's man-to-man on the outside here, if you want to take a one-on-one out there, any outside breaking routes you can kind of take. There's no outside help. And if you like your matchup, Jeremiah Smith versus a lot of corners, you can do that. Now, to get a deep comeback, and the reason you'd run a deep comeback is you want to get this defensive back, turning and running so that when you hit the brakes, he's taking a couple steps past you and the ball is delivered. Short hitches, DBs break on. Deep comebacks, it's really hard to break on, but you need more time. You need an absolute rifle to get it there. Ohio State has those things. Play action sets it up, buys time. You can see the receiver. He's getting this corner to turn. There he goes. He's starting to run. And then as he comes out of the break, that is an unbelievable throw by saying going backwards, sidearm, and then the receiver works down the route, which is so key. He didn't just turn around and sit there. He actually came back to the ball. That is a very simple play with extremely high execution when you consider the leaning sidearm throw, the impeccable accuracy, and the receiver coming back down his stem to make the catch for the first down. This quarterback sneak, I'd like to talk about it, but you're going to have to watch that in the premium version. So there we go.
So I want to talk about that last play for a second. His feet weren't set, which means to throw that ball with accuracy and zip is hard. You have to be blessed. You can't do that with so his arms, the guy bearing down on him was Colin Simmons. That some people think is one of the better defensive ends in football. I would say Austin Searville may have something to say about that, but and then the catch, he was covered. Technically, if you're grading that for PFF, that's called being covered. And he just hands catches that just with like vice grips. It's a tight window, steps. By the way, you got 2 feet in bounds for you NFL scouts watching. Carnell Tate is, man, I'll tell you something we are spoiled by. We are spoiled by the second receiver here. I know that sounds like a statement of the obvious, but the idea that you're putting in Emeka Egbuka and whoever else was Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave the number 2, was Jackson Smith and Jigba the number 2. Carnell Tate's the number 2 receiver, and he's better than. I don't want to get into the NFL, but that was just, and I would like to get your guys' opinion on this. The thing that surprised me the most. Okay, I won't say surprise. I don't like taking shots at people who aren't super bright. But Mark alluded to this, the people being obsessed with the statistics of the game. I wonder if those people watch the game. If you have 2 punts that put you on your 2 or 3 yard line, that's 2 possessions done. That's statistics you're not going to get. Then you take into account the long drives Texas had that had nothing come out of them. Those are what you call empty calories, but they go towards your stats. I didn't get the sense that Ohio State was struggling to that point. I thought that was a conservative game plan. It was 56 minutes, I think, before they scored a point. Is that right? Whatever it was. Anyone thought they were going to shut out Texas for 56 minutes? That I did not see predicted anywhere, certainly not here, and we have nuts in our name. So that was impressive. And then I don't understand is it negativity or the ambivalence toward the way Julian Sayin played? Number one, he doesn't call the plays. So I get that he missed Jeremiah Smith on the first long play, that the 4th down they went for, which he threw it to Claire, which, by the way, the ball hit Claire between the 8 and the 6. Yeah. So I get that it may not have been the right read. If your wrong reads end up with a ball dotted on someone's chest, 17 yards downfield on an out pattern, that's what you call salvaging the play. So he was 13 of 20 passing. We all saw 4 drops, okay? 4 guaranteed drops. The pass he threw to Ennis up the left, kind of I don't know what you'd even call that. Kind of, he was running towards the sideline. That ball was dropped right in the breadbasket. I think it could have been dropped. He threw one away that we saw and that they made about a colossal deal out of because it cost us a timeout. And then he had the out pattern to Jeremiah where Jeremiah got absolutely mugged. And unfortunately, I think Jeremiah is starting to get the Shaq treatment, which is where the refs are like, you got to actually hit him with a foreign object for me to call a foul because he's so much bigger and stronger than everybody else. Hopefully that gets reviewed. So you're talking about a guy that would have been 18 of 20 in his first game against the number one defense in the world in college. What are we doing here? Also, Mark and Bill, do you remember that play where Sayin made that terrible throw? Me either. Where was it? Arch threw 4 or 5 balls where you're like, what is he doing? Even Will Howard would have 2 or 3 throws a game where you'd be like, ugh! I didn't see any of those. Bill, am I overhyping Julian Sayin?
Well, I would agree. I'd agree that as I watched things multiple times, I remarked, "What in the world kind of throw was that?" And I wasn't remarking about Sayin. Yeah. I was remarking about Manning. Again, I try not to overreact, but he had some throws that were just way off, and I did not see any of those from Sayin. And I got to, hit again on what everybody saw. That Ohio State, I talked about this, and I think Mark did, and maybe Dan too, that I thought it was going to be a low-scoring game. I didn't think, though, that Ohio State would go 56 minutes, shutting them out. That was an impressive performance. And at the goal line, hats off to Matt Patricia. Somebody in here said, in our thread here, maybe along with Brian Hartline, the best hire that Ohio State has made. And Ryan Day and the Ohio State coaches in the past have had some great hires. But based on the first game, I don't know that you're going to get a whole lot more from a hire than Matt Patricia showed you on Saturday.
Yeah, Matt Patricia, if he was concerned with like raising his Q rating and his like fan acceptance rating, he should retire. There will never be a time when Matt Patricia is thought of more highly than he is now. I will say this: it does kind of feel like, and we talked about this, and you guys can chat about this if you like. There was a time when Alabama's offensive coordinator was just the NFL rehab spot. You'd come there, you'd coach for a year, maybe 2, and then you launch yourself back to the league. Chip Kelly, looked pretty good. Matt Patricia, I mean, like I said, I don't know if he'll ever be viewed as well as, and this is a guy, Matt Patricia, who has had his issues with his public perception at times. He's taken some shots. When you're the head coach of the Detroit Lions before Dan Campbell, you're literally just a piñata. And boy, it was an impressive performance. I'll say this, and Bill, you can comment on this. We've taken some shots here for being, I have at least, for being supportive of how Ohio State has approached things. I'll say this. You got 3 starters back on defense, 3. And they executed what everyone agrees is one of the more complicated defenses in the first game of the year with 8 new starters. Now, I would say this. They were new starters, but they were in the program. So technically, if everyone saw how well Jalen McClain played, you'd be paying Braylon Womack twice or 2 or 3 times what Jalen McClain's making. So now you would have been, do you think Braylon Womack will come in next year and be better than Jalen McClain was yesterday? That'd be very difficult. And you're going to have to pay him 3 times as much. Have you ever worked somewhere where the guy in front of you was about your talent level, okay, didn't produce and made 3 times as much as you? And I wonder how you'd respond to that. So I think, what's one game? But I would say I think the approach Ohio State has taken is appearing to be very sound. I wonder if either of you guys had a comment on that.
Paying, we've talked about this, and I totally agree with their strategy. Pay your guys that you want to stay first and make sure they stay. And that's, I think, overall what you're alluding to, Dan. And by the way, I don't want to throw dirt on anyone, but I don't know if either you guys or anyone else felt. I sat there, as I watched that game Saturday, thinking, Matt Patricia, Jim Knowles, I thought did a nice job, but Matt Patricia, I felt was just better, to be honest, in my opinion, from what I saw. Again, it's one game, but it was against the number one team in the country, fans.
And it was his first game. And you got 8 new starters, and they're executing the most complicated stuff. Like I said, one of the reasons I was so confident about Jeremiah Smith was, as opposed to last meeting in the playoffs where it was 1 catch for 3 yards, they lost their number 1 cover corner, Jahdae Barron, to the league. Plus, that was game 15 for Texas. You get great continuity over the course of a season and learn your teammates, and the coaches learn you and stuff. So putting in a more complex defense week 15 is different than doing it week 1 with 8 new starters. I just can't believe how complicated it was and how well they did it.
And Mark, I have to harken back. I had this on our site about a week and a half ago. I talked to somebody at Ohio State, obviously, their practices, and they told me the offense will be okay, but they raved about the defense. And as you said, there's a lot of new stars on the defense, but they just raved. And I had this on our site about how good this defense was, and that this defense is going to win games until the offense catches up a little bit. And I had that on our site thinking, just how good will this defense be? But a person that I talked to at Ohio State that has been to a lot of practice absolutely raved about him, and I saw why on Saturday.
Mark, thoughts?
I think my final thoughts for this game were, you alluded to all the new starters or whatever. Let's not get the cart in front of the horse. Nobody had film on Matt Patricia and what he was going to do. No one knew what alignments or schemes he was going to break out. And you're going to have to give this 2 or 3 weeks to brew. But once the next good team we see on our schedule has 3 or 4 weeks of Patricia tape, there will be some things that are there. And we'll see if people can get to them. I think it's real interesting. I saw someone talking about how Matt Patricia is used to trying to shut down NFL quarterbacks, NFL arms. And there are certain things those guys can do that you have to take away. Well, he doesn't really have to worry about that as much anymore. He's got to worry about, let me put it a different thing. If you gave Matt Patricia, if a rookie quarterback came in to play the Patriots at any time when Tom Brady was there, that rookie quarterback was about to get undressed in front of the entire NFL. What do you think a young quarterback coming out of high school and college, it looks like compared to a young rookie NFL guy? So if he can undress an NFL quarterback, he can then certainly undress Arch Manning in his first game ever, okay, and give him things that are going to, lock him up, freeze him, So I think that part of this went in our favor, actually. Being new, I think, at the end of the day, was actually a bonus for us. It didn't, you're saying it could have went the other way. We're being new. We weren't ready, lined up in things we weren't sure of, and it cost you a game. You were new. Being new actually was the curveball. And I think that on defense, was he getting 4-man rush? What kind of blitzes? No idea. I mean, you can go to look at his NFL tape, but the NFL tape is not going against the same animal as Texas. So are you going to use the same gun to shoot a buffalo that you would shoot a raccoon? No. So it's a different setup. So I think we're going to see how that unfolds. I worry that some random team 3 weeks from now has a game plan that takes advantage of what is on tape, and we see maybe a different side of this, because it's always the guy who has the chalk last. Our talent should supersede all of that, and it shouldn't hurt us. But you know me, I like to play Debbie Downer every now and then and look ahead to the next problem. We got a couple weeks of base defenses and playing teams that we can get away with not, having the most complex game plan, but bigger games are coming where you're going to have to see that unfold again.
That's definitely Debbie Downer. And it might be accurate. I'll say this. The difference is in the NFL, the talent level between the best team and the worst team is not that big of a difference. Whereas, wait till you see what happens this weekend. When you put Ohio State on the field with Grambling, there's no need for Matt. I don't want to say that out loud. But if Matt Patricia got the flu this week and wasn't there, Ohio State will still beat Grambling. So I don't think he's pulling out any tricks. I also would mention, I think you're going to get to see a lot of different dudes this coming week. If you ever, for example, I know there's concerns. Look, there's always it's Bucknuts. I don't care what the game is. Someone will nitpick, okay? And that's why it's here. When sometimes people get freaked out about the message boards, where else are you going to vent your spleen than Bucknuts? So there's some stuff on there that you may not want to see. But for example, and I saw it too, the running game had trouble kind of getting rolling at certain times. Like I said, I think it was very much situationally affected, if that makes sense. But like James Peoples is going to run all over Grambling. His confidence level will be sky high by the end of that game. So let's also be careful in terms of overreacting to the negative. I feel very positive about what we're going to see this weekend. And don't forget, Day came out and told everybody there are guys who are going to be major contributors to this team that you won't see week one. All they needed to do was get this dub, right? This dub will add on as you get further and further. Now, assuming Texas is as good as we think. And look, it's week one. You know, Florida State came into last season. We all thought was going to be good and, you know, was a bottom feeder. So we don't know. I don't think that's the case with Texas. They are pretty loaded. Now, I didn't hear Anthony Hill Jr., the linebacker's name, called that much. I thought our offensive line did a tremendous job against Colin Simmons. I thought their offense was pretty much held down. I don't know if Texas has the explosive players they had last year. Alex Golden was a first-round draft pick. Jadon Blue, the guy who scored both touchdowns against us, was a 4-3 guy. I didn't see that, but we'll go from there. All right, let's talk about where you guys were this past week. And Bill, I'd like to start with yourself. We've talked about kind of doubling down going forward on the coverage of guys Ohio State's going to be in it with for the long haul. And having seen yet another pipeline product star as a first-time starter in Arvell Reese, good Lord, Arvell Reese. You shouldn't be able to do that at 6'4", 243. And you shouldn't have someone lined up next to you that can do the same thing at similar size. But, Bill, you got to see a number 8 from Glenville this weekend and some others. Talk to us about what you did, what you thought, and how you spent your Friday.
Really impressed with Sincere Johnson. He looks, and I commented on this on the thread on Friday night. He looks, you walk in, you look at him, he looks like an Ohio State commitment should look. And talking to some of the Glenville staff and all, and they and Sincere have done a great job of. Sincere a couple years ago was a 6'3", probably pushing 240, 230 at least, pushing 240 pounds. And now he's a more svelte looking, probably 222, I think he told me. And it is good looking weight. He was very effective, ran to the ball well. And Old Tangy Liberty is not what they were last year when they won the Division I state championship. But Glenville went to their house and beat the defending state champions, almost shut them out. Liberty scored with, I think, 19 seconds to go. And Glenville won 13-7. But Sincere Johnson, he could be an Arvell Reese type guy, possibly. You know, like I said, he's 6'3", 222 right now, and he's going to be in Mick Marotti's program. And he is all Buckeye, by the way. Sincere. Unfortunately, Jameer Perez didn't play. He has an ankle sprain, and from what I was told, it was relatively bad ankle sprain that, you know, he just wasn't able to go. He was in street clothes on Friday. There's a chance he could play this weekend. But I did talk to JJ Perez, and he is a big young man. And, Ted Ginn and that staff do such a great job with those kids at Glenville. When you talk to them, and I talked to a number of their players after that game, when you talk to them, and I've talked to Sincere Johnson for quite a while, a number of years, those kids are really good young people and really impressive to speak to. And hats off to the Glenville staff, Ted Ginn and his staff, for the job they do with those kids.
Marcus, your thoughts on Glenville? No one knows them better than you.
I know that they lost that game last year, and it really stung them because they felt like some of the calls in the game really, worked against them. And of course, when you're the away team so far away, you kind of build a little conspiracy there. I think they were going to try to win that game double this year. They had to beat maybe the refs and the other team. I don't know how the game went in that regard, but I knew that being an away team, that was a big win. And hats off to my buddy up there, Maury Norris, the linebacker coach who coached Arvell Reese and Sincere Johnson. So you put two guys like that through the pipeline, you're going to go down as a legendary guy. And I think Glenville might be special this year into the playoffs. I mean, they've had two great wins to start their season. I did a little small-time football over in Northwest Ohio at Liberty Center and Eastwood. And it was funny. I didn't walk in the stadium, and like 5 people already knew I was there. So there must have been a message board or a podcast that gave them the heads up. But very cool, sold-out crowd. Kellen Weimer looks the part, fits the part, has the body, gave me –
Who's Kellen Weimer?
The offensive lineman for Liberty Center, who has an Ohio State offer, Notre Dame offer, Northwestern offer. Kind of blew up over the summer. Kind of started with, I think Northwestern was his first offer, and it started rolling from there. He gave me vibes of Montgomery from Findlay, long body. He gave me vibes of the Miamisburg offensive lineman, Zach Myers, that we had.
Josh
Myers, I'm sorry. Really moves around well. Dominated the competition as he should. There's a lot of kids out there that aren't going to be playing college football, and he ragdolls them around. Where he was most impressive, and we'll see this on his highlights Thursday, is on defense. He plays both ways as he should, and boy, he gets after it. And that's how you have a special offensive lineman, is if on defense they have a motor and they move around athletically. That's kind of like the tell. Very happy to see that game. Also got to see Villa Angela St. Joe's versus Cardinal Mooney. That was a slugfest back and forth. Mooney scored late to win, but D'Angelo White, one-handed catch, touchdown catch, a couple other big catches. He made plays.
Tight end with an offer?
Yeah, the tight end with an offer. Thank you, Dan. Tight end offered as a freshman. Very athletic, basketball player looking dude. Has the body right now. And I tell you what, he plays at 100% when he gets the ball. Blocking, we're going to have to work with him a little bit. And you can tell that basketball guy coming to play football, it's like me off the tee. It's either 350 yards down the middle and everyone says, wow, it's great. But then a couple drives later, it could be 50 yards right or 50 yards left. That's kind of D'Angelo right now. When he gets it right coming off the ball and blocking somebody, watch out. And then every now and then he'll slice one into the rough when he's blocking, and he's kind of feeling out the smaller guys or bigger guys. So, yeah, what a young piece of clay that will grow into a big-time tight end.
So Mark will have all these guys featured on video on Thursday in his Buckeye in the Sky for high school review. So if you guys are trying to get a master's in porterology here, so you've got the Buckeye in the Sky video, which is already up there. You'll have the chat today at 10, and then Mark will have the review of the high school guys coming on Thursday via video. I'll say this. If you were trying to put together pictures of someone as a tight end prospect in high school, and you were going to send that to somebody and say, this guy's the next blank, D'Angelo White does fit that. Mark is also a fantastic photographer who has a great camera, which means I get great pictures. He's a lot bigger than everyone. There are a couple of pictures where it looks like someone invited, it's like the 6th graders play and they invited their 10th grade brother to come play. He's just, you see the guys going to tackle him and I'm like, aim low or you're going out in a stretcher. But like you said, on the video, you can see he's probably a lot more receiver than inline blocker right now. Bill, of the names you heard there, Kellen Weimer, D'Angelo White, etc., what strikes you from a recruiting perspective?
They are all very interested in Ohio State. Not only do they have Ohio State offers, but the interest is definitely reciprocal. Reynaldo Perez, etc. And we haven't mentioned Ace Alston. Ace Alston, the corner from Cincinnati Anderson, was at that game. And Ace Alston is really, really good. And I had comments from him after the game. He had a great time at Ohio State on Saturday.
Ace Alston. Yeah, I mean, the in-state guys who are coveted. It's good to be king about Ohio State. You in-state guys that Ohio State really wants, recruiting, I think, is going to be an enjoyable experience for you. I think top of the board guys, like we've seen here, that Ohio State is dialed in on, they're going to do very well with. We'll start talking about the 2027 guys at some point too, and more in depth. I think that's their next kind of elite class. All right. Like I said, that's the 40-minute mark. 16 minutes from now live, you have time to get yourself a soda, write down some questions, and be ready for Mark at 10 a.m. sharp. We'll have this pod up for you in a little bit. Official werewolf of week 1. Let's go with Arvell Reese. I've got to decide now if you can get the award more than once. Otherwise, we may have to put Arvell Reese in there in ink as the werewolf. But these are first world problems. Hello, still basking. Have a good one.